I think about Lauren Boebert, think about Marjorie Taylor Greene, and there's about, let's call it 20, 25 of these places all over the country where you have in a congressional district 800,000 people that are being represented. It's a big number.
Yeah.
800,000 people. And pick one person, right? Send them to Washington to represent the district. There's a lot of stuff involved in that. You're in a competition against 435 other people to get your fair share.
Yep.
You have issues, you have constituents, you have Americans who are in Israel right now who need help getting out. Right? When they can't get an answer from the Israeli government, when they can't get an answer, right, from the State Department, right, they call their congressional office. Social Security check, right? So all of these things are part of being a Congress person. I'm driving through this district, and my question is, the fuck is wrong with these people that they would permit this? I get the Republican thing. I go, but you know, if we put an R next to Charlie Manson's name, you know, is he going to get the vote? And so I think about Lauren Boebert, and I think this Beetlejuice thing is a big deal. And it's not like this Republican district didn't think hard about it, right? Because you fell short by 534 votes. You're going to win this time because decency's on the ballot. And so this person literally could not make it through a play, could not make it through to intermission of Beetlejuice. The vaping, the lying, incredible. It was a first date. But put that aside. Is there a sense that's palpable of embarrassment that we have sent as a community this person there? This person represents us. Like a sense of shame that you pick up on, a sense of motivation of people coming together. Like, this is not us. This is appalling. Right? I am honestly interested because she is an outlier in the outlier field, right? That's there, like a paragon of just utter, absolute, incandescent unfitness. But why shouldn't I look and say, I don't blame her. I blame you people. Collectively, all 800,000 of you. And it pisses me off. Just like it pisses me off in that Georgia district with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Just like it pisses me off with the Nazi dentist from Arizona, Paul Gosar. And we don't ever talk about this in the country. And obviously, you can't yell at your voters. But I'd like you to explain to me, from someone who deeply loves this beautiful part of the country, how'd that happen? And 100%, I'm not castigating someone I deeply admire, who's the guy who got off the couch, said enough, I'm taking her on, fell short by 534 votes, and said, let's go again. I love that. And that's why every person who's watching this needs to support this guy. But I want to talk about that. Why shouldn't we be really pissed off at everybody who lives where you live?
Well, I hope that's not the case, Steve. A lot to unpack there. Let's say a couple things. One, yes, we live in the most beautiful district in the country. And just to give everyone a little bit of a background, it's larger than the state of Pennsylvania, half the size of Colorado. The other 7 congressional districts have the other half. We have all of the Utah border, the western slope. You drive through from Utah coming into Denver. We have a third of Wyoming, and we have about 90% of the New Mexico border, Pueblo, Otero County, San Luis Valley, Four Corners, 2 Indian reservations down there. We have oil and gas. We have Aspen, Telluride, and Crested Butte, 3 resort communities. Grand Junction, which is the hub of the Western Slope. There's a lot of moving parts. Some of the most rural counties, Hinsdale in the country, 450 or 500 people in the county. Kelowna, Colorado, population 23. And one of the highlights was definitely driving around. And so the plan was never to really run I was never planning, I'd stand up and did things for the community and everything else like that. And I'm interested in policy more than politics, but I follow it. But the plan was never to get involved at this level until a series of comments were made about 2 years ago. And again, I say, don't ask me what they were, but they were very on brand for the current representative, some version of racist, homophobic, ignorant, whatever you want to say. And there's 2 themes that we started to talk about, and it leads into kind of a bigger conversation. It was people want the circus to stop. As I mentioned before, my buddy Dean Phillips in Minnesota, who I went to school with, high school and middle school, talked about this entertainment industry. And I thought that the Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert were kind of the heads of this entertainment industry, the yelling and the screaming. We're seeing some version of that. People want the circus to stop. Our conservatives, our Republicans, are very, very libertarian in the conversation. They just don't want to get involved in heavy government. And that's why there's been a high pro-choice conversation and supportive of gay marriage. They don't really want to get into who you're marrying, who you want to love. It's almost like the UBU party for that crowd. But the tribalism is there. And there are some really bad people that if they had an R or a D by their name, it's just too many people in the country look on a ballot and they read right to left. And as soon as there's an R there, or as soon as there's a D there, the conversation is over. I'll say one thing. My team gets very, ad nauseum, I talk about this. There are 3,150 counties in the country, 3,147 counties in the country. 2,000 of them are deemed rural by the Department of Agriculture based on density. We have 27 counties. The vast majority of our counties are rural. And Bill Clinton in 96 won 52% of these 2,000 rural counties in the country. Speed up to 2012, President Obama won 25% of the rural counties. In 2020, President Biden won fewer than 10% of the rural counties in the country. So when I have conversations and talk to people about the Democratic Party, I mentioned that they need to do better than 20 big cities, Aspen and Martha's Vineyard, because that's pretty much where the Democratic Party is at the moment. And monopolies are bad in politics, and monopolies are bad in business. And I would argue that these 20 big cities are not getting the best version of the Democratic Party. And a lot of rural America, especially Western and Southern Colorado, are certainly not getting a very good version of the Republican Party. And I've said for 20 years, if there was a get stuff done party, I'd be in that party, Steve. But that party's not doing very well. And I said that 2 years ago, and look where the get stuff done party is right now. It's like hanging on a vine and whittling away. It's very, very sad about what we've seen happen, obviously internationally with Ukraine and the Mideast terrorist crisis. And obviously we have a House divided of epic proportions. We need more people looking at the name and who they are, as opposed to, are they in team blue and team red? And if I get into a team red, team blue conversation, I'm losing by 8 points. I'm going to lose by 40,000 votes. So I've said this for a long time. I'm on 80% of us, 85% of us are on Team Colorado, and 15% people are on Team Chaos. And I'm on Team Colorado. And that's what we're really focused on. And that's why, while nobody believed that we can make up a 40,000 vote deficit, as I joke, kind of. It took my mom 5 times for me to finally get her on the phone to believe I could actually do this. And we ended up, winning or losing by just under 550 votes. And one of the things that got me off the couch, and there were many, Steve, was I'm into dad, as you might be able to tell. I pulled out and looked at kind of where on one side Tlaib and Omar were, and then Marjorie Taylor Greene, Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, Paul Gosar, Andy Biggs, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and realized none of them have any chance of losing with $1 billion going into their district. But I saw in 2020, the current representative only won by 5 percentage points. And then sadly, after that, the Colorado Democratic Party kind of threw away CD3. They threw it under the bus because there was a new district that was coming in. We got an 8th district in our Colorado. We got it. I don't say we got it from California, but California went from 53 to 52. Colorado went from 7 to 8. And all of a sudden, there was a 10-point deficit. And I'm like, I think, and you know this better than I do, Steve, 1/3 of the Republican Party minimally wants their party back. People want the circus to stop. They want someone to focus on the job, not themselves. We have a lot of independent, libertarian type of conversations going out with our conservatives that I fully respect. We have lots of ranchers and farmers. They're very, very pragmatic. I've yet to meet an unpragmatic rancher. You will be out of business in 2 months, right? And she's about as unpragmatic as it gets. And I'm like, I'm fully aware the last thing the Democratic Party is looking for is some middle-aged straight white guy who lives in a mountain town, let alone Aspen, and a pretty conservative Democrat at that. And I knew another reason I decided to drive, I was going to have to drive all these miles, was once we were able to get by the primary, I was going to have to convince a lot of farmers and ranchers and small business owners in very small towns that this guy who spent 12 years in New York City, lived in a mountain town, let alone Aspen, the skepticism was going to be huge. The amount of people that thought I was going to have blue horns and mountain horns and aspen horns was gigantic. And I'm missing a lot of things, but somewhat self-aware my whole life. And so I decided to just hop in the pickup truck and start convincing people. And there was a gap. If there was a traditional Republican who've, before Lauren Boebert, all the Republicans that were running and serving were traditional Republicans, I wouldn't run. There wouldn't have been a path to victory. And I never would have thought there'd be need to, because a traditional Republican could represent this district pretty darn well. And a lot of our, water, like, are our 3 top issues. And then I would get into the rural aspects of healthcare. And Republicans get into droughts as much as Democrats, and healthcare issues as well. And so the conversation is not who's anti-water. It's who do you want sitting down in the Colorado delegation representing you and your family and your business and your community.